everyone. My name is Michelle Drollinger, and I'll be your facilitator today for the club officer training of the role of secretary. First off, congratulations on your election to secretary. In this position, you'll facilitate a smooth operation of the club by maintaining vital records. You maintain the club's written history so that the future club officers will have this important information available to them. If you've never had this role before, it is actually one of my very favorites. It was the first role that I took when I first became a Toastmaster in my very first club, and I loved it. I loved being able to write down the minutes of everything and keep everyone organized, but I'll go over all of that in the presentation. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to be going over the secretary role itself, the secretary responsibilities, and ultimately secretary resources so that you feel more prepared than just this training alone. So the session objectives for today is to identify your role, fulfill your responsibilities, and find resources that ultimately help you. So after this session, you'll be able to really fully understand what you're doing as secretary. You'll be able to fulfill those responsibilities within the club and for the club executive meeting, because that's where it goes to. And then find resources that help you past just this training alone. So the secretary role itself, you can find more information about your role in the club leadership handbook. And what I had to ask myself when I became a secretary in my club was, what is the essence of this secretary role? Basically, you maintain and manage club records, files, and correspondence for the club. This can be done for in-person sessions, hybrid sessions, or virtual sessions, because Toastmasters is providing all of those kind of meetings nowadays. You also ensure the club is organized and up to date as the secretary. That's one of your main roles. So through this session, you will learn how to make these more manageable. So what are the responsibilities of the secretary? The secretary, today I'll be going over the club meeting, outside of the club meeting, and ultimately the executive committee. All three of these timeframes are where you're going to be really vital to your club and to the Toastmasters community. So during the club meeting, before club meetings is where you're going to be making sure that all of the files are up to date. You have the meetings from the last minutes. This includes officer meetings and also the minutes from your last Toastmasters meeting. Upon arrival at club meetings, you're going to be helping the secretary at arms to get people signed in, make sure that all of the documents are there. Certainly this can be a challenge virtually, but every club is a little bit different. If you need some resources, we'll be going over those later. And then during the club meetings, you can always be taking notes. Every club is a little bit different. And so whatever your club thinks is most vital, and as officers, you can decide that together, is what you will be responsible for as the secretary. So before the club meetings, diving a little bit deeper into that, you'll post the previous minutes, as I mentioned before. Preparing a list of actions for the president, you are really vital to the president of your club. They are so busy doing all of the roles and looking over everyone else that sometimes they need a little help from their secretary. And then ultimately you update the club's officer list. This can be done online. You can be working with the public relations manager to be doing this online as well. Upon arrival at club meetings, you circulate the attendance sheet and the guest book if you have those things. Certainly virtual meetings can be a little bit different, but you'll be working with the sergeant at arms for this. During the club meeting, you'll be reading the previous minutes. Usually this is at the end of the meeting. Sometimes you do club business before the meeting actually starts. Note amendments and record current meeting minutes. This is also true for the facilitator and the officers meetings that happen outside of your Toastmasters meetings. So outside of the club meeting, you maintain accurate roster, submit club officer list, you handle all of the correspondence. You'll be working with the president for this, keeping club files and attending club executive committee meetings. You'll also vote at international business meetings. We'll talk more about that later. Facilitate member progress in base camp. You'll be working with the vice president of education for this part. Arranging for your replacement or assistance. I do have a tip on this. what I love is to get into an officer role and then ultimately elect an assistant. This assistant will be your successor for the next year, and they're actually learning the role as they go along. And so trainings like this will just be supplemental to them. They can actually see what the role entails while you're doing it, and they can help you with it. During the executive committee meeting, you would read the previous meeting minutes, note any amendments to those minutes, and also record current meeting minutes. So how to fulfill the secretary responsibility, the how, when, who, what of these. So the last thing I want to talk about today is the secretary resources that are available to you past this training. I utilized these resources. Also, utilizing your mentor or coaches in your club can be very important and very valuable to you. So getting started, attending the district-sponsored club officer training program like TLI is very helpful just to give you a leg up and an orientation to the actual role itself. There are manuals available to you. You can Google this, you can go on Toastmasters International. You can also ask your club if they've created their own materials as well. That's specific to their club if they've been around long enough to have done that. So definitely read any materials that are given to you. That could be very valuable. Meeting with outgoing executive committee. These were the folks previously in your role, as I mentioned before. Meet with the outgoing secretary, meeting with the current executive committee. These folks you will meet while you're doing your secretary role. Confirm the submission of newly elected officers list. Again, you'll be working with the public relations manager for this and reviewing and ordering any needed materials with them. Additional resources can be found on the Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. Guest book is also online for you. It's great if you're having in-person meetings. You can also make these virtually. The club officer list, and then the use of Toastmasters materials. This concludes the officer training session for secretary. Thank you so much for joining.